Lieutenant Jake Moretti adjusted his aviator sunglasses against the harsh Texas sun, his weathered hands steady on the patrol car's steering wheel. The badge on his chest read, Texas Highway Patrol. But the scars on his knuckles told a different story, one written in the sands of Fallujah and the mountains of Afghanistan. At 42, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who'd faced death and come out the other side, his gray-flecked hair cropped military short beneath his tan Stetson. Unit 7, status check. His voice crackled over the secured radio channel, encrypted, military grade, definitely not standard highway patrol issue. Ramirez, all clear on the eastern perimeter, came the first response. Sergeant Carlos Ramirez, 38, had traded his Marine Force recon uniform for a patrol badge 3 years ago, but his eyes still scanned the horizon like he was searching for insurgents in Helmand Province. His patrol car, positioned 8 miles east, looked standard from the outside. The reinforced armor plating and concealed weapons systems told a different story. Chen, Western Sector secure. Deputy Sarah Chen's voice carried the crisp efficiency of her Air Force Security Forces background. At 35, she was the team's youngest member, but her expertise in electronic warfare and surveillance made her invaluable. Her patrol vehicle housed equipment that would make most intelligence agencies envious. Dutch here, Southern Approach monitored. Officer Mike Vandenberg, nicknamed Dutch for his blonde hair and Amsterdam roots, had spent 12 years as a Navy SEAL before joining what the locals called Moretti's Special Unit. His easy smile concealed a tactical mind that had planned operations in places most maps didn't show. Highway 90 stretched endlessly through the Chihuahuan Desert, a ribbon of asphalt connecting nowhere to nowhere, or so it seemed to casual observers. 50 miles from the Mexican border, this desolate stretch had become a critical corridor for cartel operations. The afternoon heat shimmered off the pavement, creating mirages that danced like ghosts in the distance. Moretti's unit wasn't your typical highway patrol. Officially, they were part of a pilot program for enhanced border region security. Unofficially, they were the first line of defense against cartel incursions that local law enforcement couldn't handle. Each member had been carefully selected, their military background scrutinized, their skills tested in scenarios that never made it into official reports. The patrol cars themselves were masterpieces of deception. To the untrained eye, they were standard-issue Dodge Chargers with light bars and state markings. Beneath the surface, ceramic armor plates could stop .50 caliber rounds, run-flat tires could operate after multiple punctures, and hidden compartments contained enough firepower to equip a small army. The communications suite rivaled those found in Pentagon command centers. Moretti had assembled this team after too many good officers had died in cartel ambushes along this stretch. The brass in Austin had given him carte blanche: find the best, equip them properly, and stop the bloodshed. What they hadn't said explicitly was understood. Sometimes the law needed soldiers, not cops. Remember when this was just about speeding tickets? Ramirez's voice carried a hint of dark humor over the radio. That was before Los Zetas decided to make this their personal highway. Chen responded, her tone sharp with memory. 6 months ago, they'd found 2 state troopers executed on this very stretch, their patrol car burned to a shell. The sun hung low on the western horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. Jackrabbits darted between creosote bushes, and turkey vultures circled lazily overhead. To most, it was just another quiet evening in West Texas. To Moretti's team, it was the calm before a storm they could feel building. Their patrol pattern appeared random to observers but followed a carefully planned route that covered known smuggling paths and cartel observation points. They'd spent months mapping every wash, every ridge, every place where men with bad intentions could hide. The cartels thought they owned this stretch of highway. Moretti's team was here to prove them wrong. Picking up some chatter on the scanner, Dutch reported. Encrypted, but the signature matches Zeta's protocols. Moretti's jaw tightened imperceptibly. The Zetas weren't just drug runners. They were former Mexican special forces who'd gone rogue, bringing military tactics to the cartel wars. They'd been probing this sector for weeks, testing response times, looking for weaknesses. "Chun, can you decrypt?" Moretti asked. "Already on it, boss. Give me 30 seconds. Her fingers flew over a keyboard that definitely wasn't standard patrol equipment. The electronic warfare suite in her vehicle could intercept and decode most cartel communications, a capability that officially didn't exist. The team had been together for 18 months now, long enough to move and think as one unit. They'd stopped 17 smuggling operations, intercepted over 2 tons of drugs, and rescued 23 kidnapping victims. The cartels had put bounties on their heads, but they'd also learned to fear Unit 7. "Got it," Chen announced. "They're talking about a major operation tonight. Something about teaching the soldier cops a lesson." Moretti allowed himself a grim smile. Let them come. His team had faced Taliban fighters in mountain passes and insurgents in urban mazes. They'd survived because they'd learned to think like their enemies, to turn ambushes into traps for the ambushers. All units maintain patrol pattern but stay alert. If they're planning something, I want to know about it before they do. The desert evening deepened into twilight, the temperature dropping rapidly as it always did in this part of Texas. Coyotes began their nightly chorus, their howls echoing across the empty landscape. Stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky, brilliant without city lights to dim them. Each member of Unit 7 had their own reasons for being here. Moretti had lost too many brothers in uniform, both military and law enforcement, to let the cartels operate with impunity. Ramirez had family in the border towns, good people living in fear. Chin had seen intelligence reports about cartel connections to international terror networks. Dutch simply believed that evil flourished when good people did nothing. They'd all made the transition from military to law enforcement, but they never really left the battlefield. The enemies had changed, the rules of engagement were different, but the mission remained the same: protect the innocent, stop the bad guys, bring everyone home alive. "Movement on thermal, 2 miles south," Dutch reported. 3 vehicles, running dark. "I see them," Ramirez confirmed. "Coming up from the old Murphy Ranch Road. That's cartel territory." Moretti processed the information quickly. 3 vehicles meant a significant force, probably 15 to 20 men if they were packed for an operation. Running without lights suggested they didn't want to be seen, which meant they thought they had the element of surprise. "All units converge on grid reference Bravo 7. Standard intercept formation, but keep your distance. Let's see what they're up to before we make contact." The patrol cars began their choreographed dance across the desert highways, moving to intercept while maintaining the appearance of routine patrol. It was a game they'd played before, but tonight felt different. The air itself seemed charged with anticipation. "Boss, I'm getting more chatter," Chen reported. "They know we're out here. They're calling us by name. They know about the unit." Moretti felt his combat instincts sharpen. The cartels had better intelligence than most people realized, but knowing their names meant they'd been under surveillance. Someone had been watching, reporting, planning. "Doesn't change anything," he said calmly. "We do our jobs. They want to dance? We'll lead." The team moved into position with practiced efficiency, their vehicles forming a loose net around the approaching cartel convoy. In the growing darkness, the desert became a chessboard, and Moretti's team had been playing this game longer than their opponents realized. "Remember," Moretti said, keying his radio one more time, "we're not just cops out here. We're the line they don't cross. Stay sharp, trust your training, and watch each other's backs." As the last light faded from the western sky, Unit 7 prepared for whatever the night would bring. They were outnumbered, probably outgunned in terms of sheer firepower, But they had something the cartels couldn't buy or steal: the unbreakable bond of warriors who'd faced death together, and the skills honed in the world's most dangerous places. The stars wheeled overhead, silent witnesses to what was about to unfold on this remote stretch of Texas highway. In the distance, the cartel vehicles continued their approach, unaware that they weren't hunting cops tonight. They were driving straight into a unit of elite soldiers who'd traded their uniforms, but never their edge. Moretti touched the photo tape to his dashboard, his daughter's high school graduation picture. This was why he did it, why they all did it. To keep the darkness at bay, to ensure that families could sleep safely while they stood watch. "Contact in 5 minutes," Dutch reported. "They're speeding up." "Roger that," Moretti replied. "All units, weapons check. This is what we trained for." The night held its breath, waiting. On Highway 90, where the desert met the sky, two forces prepared to collide. One thought they were ambushing ordinary highway patrol officers. The other knew exactly what was coming and welcomed it with the cold professionalism of men who'd made violence their profession. As the first set of headlights appeared on the horizon, Moretti's team settled into the familiar calm that preceded action. Their badges might say Highway Patrol, but tonight, they were Rangers, Marines, Airmen, and SEALs once more. The cartels wanted a fight. They were about to get more than they'd bargained for. The desert wind whispered across the empty highway, carrying the scent of creosote and danger. In the distance, a coyote howled, a lonely sound that seemed to foretell the violence to come. Unit 7 waited, patient as the stones themselves, ready to show the cartels why some borders should never be crossed. Tonight, on this forgotten stretch of American highway, warriors would meet criminals, and the outcome would send a message that would echo through the borderlands: mess with the wolves, and you'll feel their teeth. The encrypted radio traffic intensified as Chen's sophisticated equipment decoded burst after burst of cartel communications. Her fingers danced across the military-grade communications console, pulling fragments from the digital ether and assembling them into coherent intelligence. "They're using a mix of Sinaloa and Zeta protocols," she reported, her voice tight with concentration. "This isn't just one cartel, it's a joint operation. They're calling it Operación Martillo, Operation Hammer." Moretti's eyes narrowed behind his aviator sunglasses. Joint cartel operations were rare, happening only when the target was deemed important enough to set aside bloody territorial disputes. His team had clearly become that target. "They've got spotters in Sanderson and Marathon," Chin continued, decoding another transmission. "They've been tracking our patrol patterns for 3 weeks. They know our shift changes, our routes, even our coffee stops." Dutch's voice crackled over the secure channel. "Boss, I've got visual confirmation on those 3 vehicles. Black Suburbans, heavily modified. The thermals showing at least 6 heat signatures per vehicle. They're loaded for bear." The desert evening had transformed into a tactical chessboard. Every shadow could hide a threat, every ridge might conceal observers. The team's enhanced patrol vehicles maintained their seemingly random patterns, but each movement was calculated to force the approaching cartel convoy into increasingly limited options. "There's more," Chen said, her tone sharpening. "They're talking about a 4th element. Something about Los Fantasmas están en position. The ghosts are in position." "Shit," Ramirez muttered. "Sniper teams? They've pre-positioned shooters." Moretti's mind raced through the tactical implications. The cartels weren't known for their patience or sophisticated planning, but someone had taught them well. This operation showed the hallmarks of professional military training: multiple elements, pre-positioned assets, coordinated communications. "All units, we're shifting to contingency pattern Delta," Moretti ordered. "Assume we're under observation and they've got long guns in play. Chen, I need you to triangulate those sniper positions." The team's vehicles began a complex dance of repositioning, using terrain features and the gathering darkness for concealment. Each member processed the escalating threat level with the calm professionalism born of countless combat operations. "Sir, picking up local law enforcement chatter," Dutch reported. "County sheriffs asking about increased activity on Highway 90. Want me to wave them off?" "Negative. Let them know we've got a situation developing, but keep them at least 10 miles out." This is about to get kinetic. The Suburbans had slowed their approach, their occupants likely receiving updated intelligence about the patrol unit's unexpected repositioning. The cartels had expected to catch ordinary highway patrol officers in a straightforward ambush. Instead, they were facing a team that moved with military precision. A text message appeared on Moretti's secure phone, one of their confidential informants in the border towns. "Chief, they brought El Cazador. He's running the operation personally." The temperature in Moretti's vehicle seemed to drop. El Cazador, the hunter, was a former Mexican Special Forces colonel who'd become the cartel's most feared tactical commander. He specialized in ambushing law enforcement, leaving a trail of dead officers across northern Mexico. "Team, be advised. We've got confirmation that Alejandro El Cazador Medina is commanding the hostile element. Expect tactical sophistication and extreme violence." Silence followed the announcement. Each team member knew El Cazador's reputation. He'd reportedly executed over 100 law enforcement officers and had never failed to complete an operation. "Well," Dutch finally said, his voice carrying forced lightness, "at least we know why they needed a joint operation. Couldn't let the small fish handle us, could they?" Chen's equipment suddenly erupted with new signals. Multiple drone signatures. "They've got aerial surveillance up, at least 3 units, commercial grade but modified for night operations." The chess match had just become three-dimensional. The cartels weren't just positioning ground forces, they were establishing comprehensive battlefield awareness. Someone had invested serious money and expertise into this operation. "Time to show them they're not the only ones with toys," Moretti said grimly. "Chin, activate our counter-drone protocols. Ramirez, Dutch, prepare to deploy the interceptors." From concealed compartments in their vehicles, the team extracted equipment that belonged in a special operations arms room, not a highway patrol unit. Compact drone jamming systems, night vision equipment, and advanced tactical computers transformed their patrol cars into mobile command posts. "Boss, I'm picking up more traffic," Chen reported, her voice tense. "They're discussing someone called El Halcón, the Falcon. Sounds like their inside source." The implications hit the team simultaneously. They had a mole, someone inside law enforcement who'd been feeding intelligence to the cartels. It explained how the enemy knew so much about their operations. "Compartmentalize that information," Moretti ordered. "We'll deal with the traitor later. Right now, we focus on the immediate threat." The Suburbans had stopped completely, positioned about 2 miles south of the team's location. Through night vision binoculars, Moretti could see figures deploying from the vehicles, moving with disturbing efficiency as they established fighting positions. "They're setting up a kill box," Ramirez observed. "Classic L-shaped ambush with the highway as the killing zone. They want to drive us into their fire sacks. Then we don't play their game," Moretti replied. "All units, initiate electronic warfare protocols. Let's see how well they coordinate when their comms go dark." Chen's fingers flew across her keyboard, and suddenly the airwaves filled with static and false signals. The team's electronic warfare suite began systematically jamming the cartel's communications while maintaining their own secure channels. The response was immediate. Through his night vision, Moretti watched as the cartel fighters scrambled to re-establish contact with each other. Some tried switching to backup frequencies, others resorted to hand signals. "Their drones are going haywire," Dutch reported with satisfaction. "Looks like our jamming is wreaking havoc with their control signals." But El Cazador hadn't earned his reputation by relying solely on technology. Within minutes, the cartel fighters had adapted, falling back on pre-planned signals and disciplined small unit tactics. Movement on the eastern flank, Ramirez reported. Looks like a flanking element, 6 to 8 shooters moving to establish enfilade positions. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. What had started as a simple patrol had evolved into a complex tactical engagement. The cartels had brought overwhelming force and professional leadership, clearly intending to eliminate Unit 7 completely. "Sir, we've got civilians," Chen suddenly announced. 3 vehicles approaching from the north. Looks like that church group returning from El Paso. Moretti cursed silently. The empty highway had suddenly become crowded at the worst possible moment. Innocent civilians were about to drive straight into a war zone. "Dutch, Ramirez, intercept those civilians and turn them around. Use your emergency lights but keep it low-key. We don't want to spook them into the kill zone." As his team moved to protect the unwitting civilians, Moretti noticed something troubling in the cartel's deployment pattern. They weren't just setting up an ambush, they were establishing blocking positions on all possible escape routes. "They're not planning to let anyone leave alive," he said quietly. "This isn't just about sending a message. They want to wipe us out completely." Chen's equipment crackled with a new transmission, this one on an emergency federal frequency. "All units be advised. DA's surveillance indicates possible chemical weapons in play. Repeat, hostiles may possess chemical agents." The stakes had just escalated dramatically. The cartels had apparently decided that conventional weapons weren't enough. They were prepared to use weapons of mass destruction on American soil. "Full MOPP protocols," Moretti ordered immediately. "Break out the chem gear." Each team member retrieved specialized equipment from their vehicles, military-grade chemical protective gear that no ordinary highway patrol unit would possess. As they suited up, the reality of their situation crystallized. They were facing a military-style assault with potential chemical weapons, orchestrated by one of the most dangerous men in the cartel world. "Boss, civilian vehicles are turning around," Dutch reported. "But I've got more bad news. Thermal shows additional heat signatures converging from the south. Looks like reinforcements." The tactical display in Moretti's vehicle painted a grim picture. His 4-person team was now facing at least 30 heavily armed cartel fighters, with more arriving. They had professional leadership, air support, possible chemical weapons, and had successfully cut off most escape routes. "Shen, get me a secure line to Fort Bliss," Moretti ordered. "We're going to need backup, and not the kind with badges." As Chen worked to establish contact with the nearby military base, Moretti studied the developing battlefield. The cartels had learned from their previous encounters with Unit 7. This wasn't the usual spray-and-pray attack. This was a methodical, well-planned operation designed to eliminate a specific threat. "Contact established," Chen reported. "They're scrambling a response team, but ETA is 30 minutes minimum." 30 minutes. In a firefight, that might as well be 30 years. "All right, people, listen up," Moretti said, his voice steady despite the odds. "They think they've got us boxed in. They think superior numbers means superior force. They're wrong. We've all been here before, different desert, different enemy, same shit. We use their numbers against them. We make them pay for every inch." Through his night vision, Moretti could see El Cazador himself now, standing beside one of the Suburbans, orchestrating the deployment of his forces with hand signals and radio commands. The man moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost an engagement. "Tonight he learns what it means to hunt wolves," Moretti said quietly. The desert wind had picked up, carrying the scent of creosote and gasoline. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to the violence about to unfold below. Somewhere in the distance, a screech owl called, a harbinger of death in Apache folklore. "All units, weapons free on my mark," Moretti ordered. "Remember your training. Short, controlled bursts. Watch your sectors. And above all, he was interrupted by Chen's urgent voice. Incoming! They're launching the assault! The night erupted in muzzle flashes and the distinctive crack of automatic weapons fire. Tracers split the darkness like angry fireflies as the cartels opened up with everything they had. All units, execute! 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 Unit 7's response was immediate and devastating. Instead of cowering behind their vehicles as expected, they went on the offensive, using tactics honed in the mountains of Afghanistan and the streets of Fallujah. Dutch's vehicle surged forward, its hidden armor deflecting the incoming rounds as he maneuvered to break the enemy's formation. Ramirez executed a perfect turn, bringing his vehicle's concealed weapons systems to bear on the flanking element. Chen's electronic warfare system screamed into full power, not just jamming communications but actively hijacking the cartel's drones, turning their own reconnaissance assets against them. And Moretti, the old ranger, did what rangers do best. He led from the front, his vehicle spearheading an assault directly into what should have been the cartel's strongest position. The battle for Highway 90 had begun, and El Cazador was about to discover why some men were never meant to leave the battlefield behind. They simply brought it with them wherever they went. Rounds cracked overhead, radios chattered with tactical calls, and the desert night transformed into a maelstrom of violence. But through it all, Unit 7 moved with the precise, lethal efficiency of the warriors they had never stopped being. The hunters had become the hunted, and the night was still young. The first RPG round struck the ground 20 feet to Moretti's left, the explosion sending a column of desert earth into the night sky. His patrol vehicle's reinforced windows spiderwebbed but held as shrapnel peppered the armored exterior. Contact left! RPG team at 10 o'clock, 200 meters! Moretti barked into his radio while executing a violent evasive maneuver that would have rolled a standard patrol car. The ambush had erupted with tactical precision. Automatic weapons fire created interlocking fields of death along Highway 90, while designated marksmen sought to pin down Unit 7's vehicles. The cartels had brought military-grade firepower to what they'd expected to be a simple execution. Dutch here, I've got 3 shooters advancing on my position. These aren't street thugs, boss. They're using bounding overwatch. Through his night vision, Moretti could see Dutch was right. The cartel fighters moved like trained infantry, one team providing covering fire while another advanced, then switching roles. Someone had definitely been training these men in military tactics. Ramirez's voice cut through the radio chatter. Taking heavy fire from elevated positions. They've got at least 2.50 calories up on that ridge. His transmission ended in a burst of static as a heavy machine gun round found its mark, punching through his vehicle's armor. Ramirez! Report! I'm good, boss. Armor held, but barely. These aren't normal cartel weapons. Someone's been shopping at military surplus. Moretti's mind raced through calculations. His team was outnumbered at least 8-1, facing enemies with heavy weapons and tactical training. Standard law enforcement doctrine would call for establishing a defensive position and waiting for backup. But they weren't standard law enforcement. A memory flashed unbidden, Fallujah, 2004. His ranger team pinned down by insurgents, outnumbered, outgunned. They'd turned the ambush around by doing what the enemy least expected, attacking. All units, prepare for assault maneuver Alpha 7. We're going on offense. Boss, respectfully, are you insane? Dutch responded, even as he began maneuvering his vehicle into position. These guys studied our defensive playbook. Moretti replied. Time to show them what rangers do when cornered. Another RPG screamed overhead, detonating against a rock outcropping. The explosion illuminated the battlefield momentarily, revealing at least 20 cartel fighters advancing in coordinated fashion. Shun, I need you to paint targets for precision strikes. Ramirez, prepare for bounding assault. Dutch, you're our base of fire. On my mark, We show these bastards why you don't bring a gang to a soldier fight. The team's vehicles began moving with choreographed precision, their enhanced engines roaring as they accelerated into what should have been certain death. But each member knew their role perfectly. This was a maneuver they practiced countless times. Chen's electronic warfare systems suddenly blazed to life, not just jamming enemy communications but broadcasting false radio traffic that created confusion in the cartel ranks. Simultaneously, her vehicle's hidden weapons pods deployed, revealing a sophisticated targeting system that began painting enemy positions with invisible laser designators. Multiple targets acquired, Chen reported with clinical detachment. Feeding data to all units. Dutch's vehicle screeched to a halt in a tactically advantageous position, and hidden panels slid open to reveal mounted weapon systems that would be more at home on a military technical than a patrol car. He opened fire with devastating accuracy, his rounds guided by Chen's targeting data. The disciplined advance of the cartel fighters faltered as precisely aimed fire began taking its toll. What had been a coordinated assault started to fragment as squad leaders went down and communications became unreliable. Moving! Ramirez called out, his vehicle surging forward in a classic fire and movement maneuver. As he advanced, Moretti provided covering fire, his vehicle's concealed weapons systems proving devastatingly effective. The cartels had expected to ambush highway patrol officers. Instead, they found themselves fighting a coordinated military unit that happened to wear badges. A sudden explosion rocked Moretti's vehicle. A cartel technical had managed to flank them, its mounted heavy machine gun chattering angry red tracers across the night. The rounds hammered against Moretti's armor, finding weak points, beginning to penetrate. "I'm hit. Armor's compromised," Moretti reported, wrestling with the wheel as his vehicle's handling deteriorated. Without hesitation, Ramirez changed course, positioning his vehicle between Moretti and the technical. "I've got you covered, LT, get to defilade." The technical's gunner shifted fire to Ramirez, the heavy rounds impacting with sledgehammer force. Inside his vehicle, warning lights flashed and alarms screamed as critical systems began failing. "Ramirez, break contact!" Moretti ordered. "Negative, sir." "Someone's got to." A rocket-propelled grenade struck Ramirez's vehicle squarely in the engine compartment. The explosion lifted the front end off the ground, and for a moment, it seemed the vehicle would flip entirely. When it crashed back down, smoke poured from under the hood. "Ramirez is down," Chen reported. "I'm moving to assist." "Negative," Moretti countermanded. "Maintain targeting support." "Dutch, can you reach him?" "Already en route," Dutch replied, his vehicle weaving through incoming fire with practiced ease. As Dutch maneuvered toward their fallen teammate, Moretti noticed a disturbing pattern in the enemy's movements. Despite the jamming, despite their losses, the cartel fighters were regrouping with alarming efficiency. "They're adapting," he said. "El Cazador's taking direct control." Sure enough, through his night vision equipment, Moretti could see the infamous cartel commander moving among his troops, using hand signals and runners to coordinate their actions. The enemy fire became more disciplined, more focused. "Boss, we've got a problem." Chen's voice carried unusual tension. "My systems are detecting NBC markers. They're deploying chemical weapons." Moretti's blood ran cold. Their intelligence had warned about possible chemical agents, but they'd hoped it was exaggerated. Now, watching cartel fighters donning gas masks, the threat became terrifyingly real. "All units, MOPP level 4 now!" Even as he gave the order, Moretti saw the first gas canisters sailing through the air. They landed with dull thuds, immediately beginning to release their poisonous cargo. The desert wind, previously their ally in dispersing smoke, now became an enemy as it carried toxic clouds toward their position. "This is illegal," Dutch snarled over the radio. "Chemical weapons on U.S. soil. They don't care about legal," Moretti replied grimly, sealing his own protective gear. They care about sending a message. Through his gas mask's protective lenses, Moretti watched the battle take on a surreal quality. The chemical agent created an ethereal fog that twisted and writhed in the moonlight. Muzzle flashes became ghostly strobes, and the desert transformed into an alien landscape. "Ramirez, status report," Moretti demanded. Silence. "Dutch, can you reach Ramirez?" "Negative, boss. Too much incoming fire. They're concentrating on keeping me back." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. They had one man down, chemical weapons in play, and faced an enemy that seemed to know their every move. Standard operating procedure would be to withdraw, regroup, call for hazmat support. But Moretti knew withdrawal wasn't an option. El Cazador wouldn't let them escape. This was designed as an annihilation. They had to break the enemy's cohesion, create enough chaos to either escape or survive until reinforcements arrived. "Chen, how long until military support?" 15 minutes minimum. Fort Bliss is scrambling everything they have." 15 minutes. In their current situation, it might as well be 15 hours. A new sound cut through the battle, the distinctive whine of turbine engines. Moretti's heart sank as he recognized the approaching aircraft. Helicopter inbound. Chin confirmed his fears. Looks like a modified Huey, armed configuration. The cartels had brought air support. This wasn't just an ambush anymore. It was a full military operation. The helicopter swept in low, its door gunners opening fire with devastating effect. Rounds hammered down from above, finding gaps in cover that ground forces couldn't exploit. "We need to ground that bird!" Moretti shouted. "On it," Dutch replied. His vehicle's hidden weapons pod elevated, tracking the helicopter. "Just need a clear shot." The Huey banked hard, its pilot obviously experienced in combat maneuvers. Door gunners continued their suppressive fire while the aircraft positioned for a rocket run. "He's lining up on Chen," Moretti warned. Chen's vehicle erupted in a cloud of smoke and chaff as she deployed countermeasures, but the helicopter's rockets were already away. The projectiles screamed earthward, brackets Chen's position with devastating accuracy. The explosions merged into one continuous roar, throwing Chen's vehicle sideways. When the smoke cleared, her patrol car lay on its side, flames beginning to lick at the undercarriage. "Chen's hit. Vehicle destroyed," Dutch reported. "Can you see her?" Moretti demanded, fighting to keep desperation from his voice. "Negative visual on Chen. Too much smoke." The situation had gone from bad to catastrophic. Half his team was down, they were surrounded, facing chemical weapons and air support. This was exactly the kind of situation that got good people killed. But Moretti had learned something in his years of combat. When everything goes to hell, that's when warriors shine brightest. All remaining units, execute Broken Arrow protocols. There was a moment of radio silence. Broken Arrow was their last resort plan, a final, desperate gambit that would either save them or ensure they didn't die alone. "Copy Broken Arrow," Dutch acknowledged grimly. "It's been an honor, sir." "The honor's mine. Now let's show these bastards how Americans die." From concealed compartments in their vehicles, both men extracted weapons that definitely weren't standard law enforcement issue. Anti-tank missiles, automatic grenade launchers, and enough explosives to level a city block. "El Cazador wants to play soldier?" Moretti said, arming an AT-4 rocket launcher. "Let's teach him what real soldiers can do." The helicopter was coming around for another pass when Dutch achieved missile lock. His Stinger surface-to-air missile leaped from its tube with a whoosh of expelled gases, its seeker head finding the Huey's hot exhaust. The explosion lit up the night sky, the helicopter dissolving into a fireball that rained burning debris across the battlefield. The psychological impact on the cartel fighters was immediate. Their air support, their symbol of superiority, had just been swatted from the sky. "Push now!" Moretti ordered, pressing his advantage. Both vehicles surged forward, their heavy weapons creating a storm of destruction. Moretti fired his. At the largest concentration of enemy fighters, the rocket's warhead designed to defeat armored vehicles proving equally effective against personnel in the open. The explosion created a moment of stunned silence across the battlefield, followed by screams as the reality of their situation hit the cartel fighters. They weren't hunting cops. They were fighting a war against trained killers who had just demonstrated they possessed military-grade weapons. Through the smoke and chaos, Moretti saw Al Cazador for a split second. The cartel commander's eyes met his through the swirling chemical fog, and in that moment, both men recognized a kindred spirit, warriors from different sides of the law, but warriors nonetheless. Then the moment passed, and the battle resumed with renewed fury. An explosion behind him made Moretti whirl around. Dutch's vehicle had taken a direct hit from an RPG, the blast lifting the rear end completely off the ground. When it crashed back down, Moretti could see Dutch slumped over the wheel, blood visible even through the cracked windshield. "Dutch! Dutch, respond!" Nothing. Moretti was alone now, his team down, surrounded by enemies who smelled blood. The chemical agent swirled thicker, and through his masked filters, he could hear his own labored breathing. In the distance, barely audible over the gunfire, came the sound of rotor blades, multiple helicopters, approaching fast. The cavalry was coming, but would they arrive in time? A rifle grenade detonated near his vehicle, the concussion rattling his teeth. Warning lights flashed across his dashboard as more systems failed. His armor was compromised, his ammunition running low, his team scattered. But Jake Moretti had been here before. In Ramadi, when his squad was pinned down for 6 hours. In the Karengo Valley, when they thought they wouldn't see another sunrise. In a dozen other places where death seemed certain. Each time, he'd found that extra reserve, that additional gear that separated the quick from the dead. Tonight would be no different. "You want me, El Cazador?" he muttered, reaching for his rifle. "Come and get me." Moretti kicked open his door and stepped out into the chemical fog, his weapon raised, ready to show these cartel thugs what a real warrior could do when cornered. The desert night erupted in violence once more, but this time, it was personal. No more vehicle armor, no more distance, just a ranger and his rifle against anyone foolish enough to come within range. The battle for Highway 90 had reached its crescendo, and morning felt very far away indeed. The chemical fog swirled around Moretti like specters of battles past as he moved through the kill zone with lethal precision. His rifle barked in controlled pairs, the double-tap rhythm of a professional who never wasted ammunition. 3 cartel fighters went down before they even registered his presence outside the vehicle. "El Cazador!" Moretti's voice boomed across the battlefield, amplified by his MOPP gear's external speaker. "You wanted the soldier cop? Here I am!" The challenge echoed across the desert, and for a moment, the gunfire diminished. Through the toxic haze, Moretti saw movement, discipline, purposeful. El Cazador was accepting the challenge. A burst of automatic fire forced Moretti into cover behind a destroyed cartel technical. Rounds sparked off the vehicle's frame as he quickly assessed his situation. Magazine half empty, 2 grenades left, knife sidearm. Against at least 15 remaining hostiles. The odds would have concerned a lesser man. Movement to his left, Moretti spun, his rifle already tracking. A cartel fighter materialized from the fog, AK-47 rising. Moretti's rounds caught him center mass before he could fire, the impact throwing him backward into the chemical mist. "Contact right!" someone shouted in Spanish. Moretti was already moving, using the fog as concealment. His boots found purchase on familiar terrain. He'd memorized every rock, every depression during their patrols. Now that knowledge became a weapon. 3 more fighters appeared, moving in a tactical wedge. Military trained, just as Dutch had reported. Moretti's hands moved without conscious thought, pin pulled, grenade arcing through the air. The explosion scattered them like bowling pins. Before the debris settled, Moretti was advancing. His rifle found the first survivor trying to crawl away. The second managed to raise his weapon. Moretti's sidearm cleared leather faster, the .45 caliber rounds decisive at close range. Through his masked visor, Moretti caught glimpse of Chen's overturned vehicle. Hope flared. Was that movement near the wreckage? Chun! Sound off if you can hear me! A weak cough answered, followed by, Still operational, boss. Relief flooded through him, immediately replaced by determination. His people were alive. That meant failure wasn't an option. Sit tight. Cavalry's inbound. Negative, sir. Chen's voice grew stronger. I've got something special saved for this occasion. Before Moretti could respond, Chen's vehicle erupted in a spectacular display of electronic warfare. Hidden antennae deployed, electromagnetic pulses burst outward, and suddenly every piece of electronic equipment within 300 meters went haywire. Night vision systems failed. Radio communications died. Electronic weapon sights went dark. Even the chemical agent detectors started giving false readings. In the sudden electronic darkness, Moretti smiled grimly. Chen had just leveled the playing field. Now it was about basic soldier skills, iron sights, situational awareness, controlled violence. A figure emerged from the fog, tall, commanding, moving with predatory grace. El Cazador himself, stripped of his electronic advantages but no less dangerous. The cartel commander had ditched his assault rifle for something more personal, a machete in one hand, pistol in the other. Senor Moretti. El Cazador's English was accented but precise. The famous ranger. I studied your operations in Iraq. Impressive work. Should have studied harder. Moretti replied, his rifle steady. Might have learned not to use chemical weapons on American soil. El Cazador laughed, a cold sound that carried no humor. Laws are for those too weak to seize what they want. We are beyond such constraints. No, Moretti said quietly. You're just another thug who thinks violence equals strength. Let me show you the difference. They moved simultaneously, El Cazador's pistol rising as Moretti's rifle snapped up. Both men fired, both missed as they dove for cover. The dance had begun. Moretti rolled behind a boulder, immediately displacing as rounds chipped rock where he'd been. El Cazador was good, maybe the best he'd faced since leaving the military. But good wasn't enough. The ranger's mind shifted into that cold, analytical space where time slowed and options presented themselves with crystal clarity. El Cazador was proud, aggressive. He'd want to close distance, make this personal. That pride would be his undoing. Moretti fired twice, deliberately missing but close enough to provoke. El Cazador responded predictably, advancing while firing suppressive bursts. Each step brought him closer to the trap Moretti was constructing. At 20 meters, Moretti executed his plan. His last grenade sailed not at El Cazador, but behind him, cutting off retreat. As the cartel commander instinctively moved forward to escape the blast, Moretti was already moving to intercept. They collided in the swirling fog, rifle against machete, experience against fury. El Cazador's blade carved the air where Moretti's head had been a split second before. Moretti's rifle stock crashed against the cartel leader's jaw, staggering him backward. You fight like the special forces. El Cazador spat blood, his pistol coming up again. Moretti's hand blurred, his combat knife suddenly protruding from El Cazador's gun hand. The pistol clattered away as the cartel commander roared in pain and rage. No, Moretti corrected, closing distance. I fight like a ranger. The machete whistled past his ear as Moretti ducked, came up inside El Cazador's guard. His fist drove into the cartel commander's solar plexus, followed by an elbow that shattered his nose. As El Cazador stumbled backward, Moretti's boots swept his legs. The cartel commander crashed down, gasping in the chemical fog. Moretti's rifle barrel pressed against his forehead. "Your men are scattered. Your air support is down. You've lost." Moretti's voice was steady, professional. "Surrender." El Cazador's eyes blazed with hatred. "You think this ends with me? We are legion. Kill me, 10 more take my place." "Maybe," Moretti acknowledged. "But they'll know what happened here. They'll know American law enforcement isn't helpless prey." A sound cut through their confrontation, the distinctive whump 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 of approaching helicopters. Not one or two, but many. The cavalry had arrived in force. Searchlights blazed down through the chemical fog, illuminating the battlefield. Black Hawks and Apaches circled overhead while CH-47 Chinooks began disgorging troops, not just military, but FBI HRT, DA tactical teams, and what looked suspiciously like Delta Force operators. "Unit 7, this is Colonel Hayes, Fort Bliss Quick Reaction Force. We have the area secured. Medical teams are inbound." As El Cazador was taken into custody, Moretti rushed to check on his team. He found Dutch first, conscious but bloodied, already being treated by army medics. "Told you. Broken arrow works," Dutch managed through split lips. "Save your breath for the after-action report," Moretti replied, gripping his shoulder. Ramirez was next, his vehicle destroyed but the man himself remarkably intact, protected by the armor that had held just long enough. "LT, remind me to thank whoever spec'd these cars," Ramirez said as medics checked him over. "Thank yourself? You wrote the requirements." Cheney found sitting against her overturned vehicle, laptop still running despite everything, monitoring the electronic battlefield even as medics tried to examine her. "Boss, I've got all their communications recorded. Every order, every transmission. We can roll up their entire network." "Outstanding work, Deputy. Now let the medics do their job." As hazmat teams worked to neutralize the chemical agents and investigators began processing the scene, Moretti found himself standing with Colonel Hayes, an old friend from his Ranger days. "Jake, what you and your team did here. This is going to send shockwaves through every cartel from here to Colombia." "Just doing our jobs, sir." Hayes shook his head. "Don't give me that modest crap. You took on a reinforced cartel strike force with chemical weapons and air support. With 4 people. And 1. FBI Special Agent Maria Valdez approached, her tactical gear still dusty from the helicopter insertion. "Lieutenant Moretti? I need to debrief you, but first, we've identified your mole. Deputy Commissioner Harrison. He's already in custody." The betrayal stung, but Moretti had suspected someone at that level. Only a high-ranking official could have provided such detailed intelligence to the cartels. "There's more," Valdez continued. "El Cazador's laptop survived. Preliminary analysis shows connections to international terror networks. This wasn't just about drugs, they were planning something bigger." The implications were staggering. Unit 7 hadn't just stopped a cartel ambush. They'd potentially disrupted a major terrorist operation on American soil. As dawn approached, painting the desert sky in shades of pink and gold, Moretti stood surveying the battlefield. Destroyed vehicles, scattered weapons, the detritus of modern warfare on American soil. His team had paid a heavy price: wounds that would heal, vehicles that could be replaced, innocence that was already long lost. But they'd held the line. They'd proven that American law enforcement, when properly trained and equipped, could stand against any threat. "Sir?" A young army specialist approached. "We found something you should see." He led Moretti to one of the captured cartel vehicles. In the back seat, carefully wrapped and protected, were documents and hard drives, operational plans, financial records, communications logs. Looks like El Cazador never expected to lose, the specialist observed. Moretti smiled grimly. His first mistake was underestimating American resolve. His second was thinking badges made us less dangerous than uniforms. As medical helicopters evacuated the wounded and investigators swarmed the scene, Moretti allowed himself a moment of reflection. The cartels had brought war to American soil, expecting to face cops. Instead, they'd encountered warriors who never really left the battlefield, who'd simply traded one form of service for another. Tonight, on this remote stretch of Highway 90, that distinction had made all the difference. The rising sun revealed the full scope of the battle, a testament to what happens when those who traffic in fear encounter those who traffic in courage. El Cazador had learned too late that some lines, once crossed, awaken responses that criminal minds cannot comprehend. In his tactical vest pocket, Moretti's phone buzzed with a message from the Pentagon. Operation successful. Presidential briefing requested. Stand by for further orders. The battle for Highway 90 was over, but Moretti sensed this was just the beginning. The cartels had escalated to military tactics and weapons of mass destruction. The response would be proportional, and Unit 7 had just become the tip of the spear. As his team was loaded into medical evacuation helicopters, Moretti took one last look at the battlefield. The chemical fog had dissipated, carried away by the desert wind. The message to the cartels was clear: bring war to America, and America brings warriors. Lieutenant? A medic called. We need to check you over. In a minute, Moretti replied, his eyes on the horizon where Mexico lay beyond sight. Just remembering why we do this. The medic nodded understanding. In the distance, an eagle circled overhead, a fitting symbol for what had transpired. American strength, vigilant and deadly when provoked, had prevailed once again. The sun rose fully now, banishing the last shadows of night. On Highway 90, where law and chaos had collided, order had been restored, not through superior numbers or firepower, but through the indomitable spirit of those who refused to yield. Moretti finally turned toward the medical helicopter, his duty for the night complete. Behind him, the battlefield told its story to the rising sun, a story of courage, sacrifice, and the price of freedom. The cartels had sought to send a message. They had succeeded, just not the one they intended. From this night forward, every criminal organization would know American highways were protected by something more formidable than mere law enforcement. They were guarded by warriors who never forgotten their oath to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And tonight, on this desolate stretch of Texas highway, that oath had been written in fire and blood for all to see. The morning sun cast long shadows across Highway 90 as emergency vehicles departed and forensic teams catalogued the battlefield. Moretti sat on the tailgate of an ambulance, finally allowing medics to examine the various cuts and bruises he'd accumulated during the fight. That's going to need stitches, the young army medic observed, cleaning a gash on Moretti's forearm. Add it to the collection, Moretti replied, his mind already processing the night's events and their implications. Across the impromptu command post, his team was receiving similar treatment. Dutch sported a concussion and multiple lacerations but insisted on giving his statement to federal investigators before accepting evacuation. Ramirez, despite bruised ribs and a separated shoulder, was already sketching tactical diagrams for the after-action report. Chen, arguably the least physically injured, was working with NSA specialists to decrypt the treasure trove of cartel intelligence her systems had captured. FBI Special Agent Valdez approached, her tactical gear now replaced with a standard field jacket. Lieutenant Moretti, Washington wants a preliminary brief in 1 hour. They're particularly interested in the chemical weapons aspect. Understood. Tell them we'll need to discuss expanding Unit 7's mandate and resources. Valdez raised an eyebrow. Already thinking about the next fight? The cartels just showed they're willing to use WMDs on American soil. This isn't ending with one battle. She nodded, making notes. The president's convening a National Security Council meeting this afternoon. Your name's on the briefing list. As Valdez walked away, Moretti's secure phone buzzed. The caller ID showed a number he hadn't seen in years, SOCOM headquarters. Moretti, he answered. Jake, it's General Thompson. Outstanding work last night. Thank you, sir. I'll be direct. We want Unit 7 expanded into a multi-state operation. Full federal backing, military support when needed. You'd report directly to a joint task force including SOCOM, DA, and FBI leadership. Respectfully, sir, we're law enforcement officers, not military assets. After last night, that distinction's getting blurry. The cartels brought military tactics to American soil. We need people who can respond in kind while maintaining law enforcement authorities. Your team proved that's possible. Moretti watched his teammates being treated, saw the determination in their eyes despite their injuries. They'd crossed a line last night, treating American highways like combat zones. But the cartels had crossed it first. I'll need to discuss it with my team. Of course. But Jake? The president's already approved the expansion. This is happening. The only question is whether you're leading it. After the call ended, Moretti gathered his team, despite the medics' protests. So we're getting promoted? Dutch asked, holding an ice pack to his head. More like deputized. Moretti replied. They want to create similar units in Arizona, New Mexico, California. We'd train them, establish protocols, basically build a rapid response force for cartel military actions. About time, Ramirez said. Local departments can't handle what we faced last night. Chen looked up from her laptop. The intelligence we captured shows similar operations planned in at least 6 border states. If we hadn't stopped them here. Exactly. Last night was a probe. They're testing our responses, seeing what they can get away with. Dutch shifted his ice pack. So we're not just highway patrol anymore. We never were, Moretti said. We just made it official last night. News helicopters circled overhead as the first media briefings began. The official story was carefully crafted. Elite law enforcement officers had thwarted a major cartel operation. No mention of chemical weapons, military-grade arsenals, or the international terrorism connections. But in law enforcement circles, the real story spread quickly. 4 officers had faced down a cartel army and won. The rules of engagement on the border had just changed dramatically. Throughout the day, messages poured in from other agencies. Border Patrol agents who'd lost friends to cartel violence. DA teams who'd been outgunned too many times. Local sheriffs overwhelmed by the sophistication of modern smuggling operations. All asking the same question: how do we get training from Unit 7? We're going to need a bigger facility, Chen observed, reviewing the requests. Already in the works, Moretti replied. Fort Bliss is offering space for a joint training center. As the sun reached its zenith, a convoy of black SUVs arrived. Federal officials, military brass, and what looked suspiciously like intelligence operatives emerged, all wanting to debrief Unit 7. The afternoon blurred into a series of meetings, briefings, and planning sessions. Moretti found himself discussing operational concepts with generals, legal frameworks with Justice Department officials, and resource allocation with congressional staffers. By evening, the shape of the new organization was emerging. Unit 7 would become the core of a specialized task force operating in the gray area between military and law enforcement. They'd have access to military resources when needed but maintain their law enforcement powers and oversight. It's unprecedented, a Justice Department lawyer admitted. But so is using chemical weapons on American soil. As darkness fell, Moretti stood again on Highway 90, now cleared of emergency vehicles but still bearing the scars of battle. Bullet holes pocked the asphalt, and scorch marks showed where vehicles had burned. His team joined him, all sporting bandages but standing tall. "Think they'll try again?" Dutch asked. "Count on it," Moretti replied. "But next time, they'll face more than just four of us." Chen's laptop chimed with an incoming message. "First batch of volunteers for the expanded unit just came in. 300 applications in the last hour. Screen for combat veterans with law enforcement experience," Moretti instructed. "We need people who understand both worlds." Ramirez pointed to the horizon, where the last light was fading. "You realize we just changed everything, right? This isn't law enforcement anymore. It's not quite military either. It's something new. Maybe something necessary," Moretti said. "The cartels evolved. We evolved to meet them." A shooting star streaked across the Texas sky, and Moretti remembered his daughter's graduation photo still taped to his dashboard. This was still about protecting families, about keeping the darkness at bay. The methods had changed, but the mission remained the same. "All right, Unit 7. He addressed his team. "We've got work to do. New recruits to train, new procedures to write, and probably more cartels stupid enough to test us." "Huh!" They responded in unison. Not quite police, not quite military, but something uniquely American, warriors who carried badges, protectors who understood that sometimes the law needed teeth. As they walked back to the command post, the desert wind carried the faint sound of helicopters, military craft now openly patrolling the border regions. The transformation was complete. America had drawn a line in the sand, and Unit 7 stood ready to enforce it. The battle for Highway 90 had ended, but the war for America's borders had just begun. And this time, the defenders were ready. 6 months later, Highway 90 bore no visible scars from the battle that had changed everything. But the transformation it sparked was evident across the borderlands. Unit 7 had grown into a multi-state operation with 50 highly trained operators, each bringing military experience to law enforcement roles. The cartels had pulled back significantly from American territory. Intelligence reports showed heated debates within their leadership, some arguing for revenge, others recognizing that the rules had fundamentally changed. El Cazador's capture and subsequent testimony had exposed numerous corrupt officials and dismantled several trafficking networks. Moretti stood in the new Joint Operations Center at Fort Bliss, watching monitors displaying real-time feeds from the border regions. His team had become instructors, training the next generation of tactical law enforcement officers who could think like soldiers while maintaining the restraint of peace officers. "Latest intel suggests Los Zetas are restructuring," Chen reported, now heading the intelligence division. "They're avoiding any operations that might trigger a Unit 7 response." "Good," Moretti replied. "Deterrence is working." Dutch, sporting new captain's bars, added, 3 more state legislatures approved similar units this week. Arizona's launching next month. The phone rang, a secure line from Washington. Moretti had grown accustomed to these calls from various 3-letter agencies seeking advice or coordination. "Moretti," he answered. "Lieutenant, or should I say Commander now?" The President's voice was unmistakable. "I wanted to personally thank you for your service. Your actions that night saved countless lives." "Just doing our duty, sir." "Indeed. But duty takes many forms. You've shown us a new way to protect our borders while respecting our laws. That's no small achievement." After the call, Moretti walked outside where the Texas sun was setting behind the Franklin Mountains. The same sun that had risen over a battlefield 6 months ago now set on a more secure nation. The cartel's defeat was undeniable. Though some questioned the extent of their actions, most celebrated the powerful message sent: America does not bow to intimidation. Moretti and his team, humble yet firm, quietly stepped back from the limelight, continuing their duties without fanfare, steadfast in moral clarity. Their story stands as a testament to an enduring American truth, that genuine strength lies not in aggression but in preparedness, resolve, and the unwavering commitment to justice and liberty for all. What do you think about this incredible stand? Do you believe strength alone guarantees justice, or does real power lie in partnership, strategy, and bravery? Share your perspective in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more gripping real-life stories of courage in the face of overwhelming odds.